Welcome to Studio 21. For the next minutes, we're going to be talking with probably the most familiar face in Tulsa, familiar voice as well, Henry Primeaux.
Loren, you're so kind.
Well, this is going to be a unique opportunity. Most of the time, when people encounter Henry Primeaux, it's for 30 seconds or a minute or so. Where the heck did you come from, and why do you talk the way you do?
Well, I talk funny because I came from New Orleans, but in New Orleans, all of y'all talk funny. See, we talk just like everybody else. And I've been gone there from there since 1980, but I haven't lost it. My wife and I, and then of course the kids, some of them have lost it and some of them haven't. And so we're Yats. You know, where you at? That's kind of a New Orleans greeting. So that's how I was born and raised in New Orleans. Jane and I married in New Orleans. As a matter of fact, in July, on the 20th, we'll be married 50 years to each other. That's even better.
Now, what did you do to make a buck early on?
I was a controller at a concrete company. I went to work, I had a seafood business, and then I went to work for a fellow who was in the advertising business who did automotive advertising. And I went to work for him as a controller, and then he found out that I had my share of pizzazz to talk, so I started to sell and visit dealers. Primarily, we did furniture stores and dealers. But I kind of gravitated away from advertising because I saw a need for training, so I went into the training side, but kept my advertising hat on most of my career because, you know, everybody sells because you sell yourself, and that's the biggest thing.
Now, early on, were you an on-camera type of person in advertising?
Oh, I did commercials from time to time, but with this voice, you know, even down there, I could get away with it. But I know I was a behind-the-scenes guy, so that's why I was very familiar with production. And in the old days, we were talking before about doing static shots in the studio, and we'd put tape on the cars so they wouldn't flare. And one day, one of them flared, and it looked good on camera, so we kept it. And now, today, it's all artsy-fartsy, and everybody's really interested in the production. And, you know, right now, I do all of my radio, television, and print commercials myself, and with a friend of mine, and we do it right at the dealership.
All right. You read scripts?
Yeah, I can. Sometimes when I do a commercial, I have a cue card, but very seldom. I'd rather be more natural, but, you know, I don't want to be reading the script and looking like this, so I'll try to do it from memory.
In television news, we have outtakes that we keep and we air at parties. Do you have outtakes?
Yes, I do, and some of them we can't show. Yeah, I have plenty of outtakes. But the guys at the dealership, they're all hanging around and they're all watching, and every once in a while I'll put them in a commercial, and they're just amazed that people recognize them. But it's like anything else. If you enjoy it, then it's easy to do.
When you were 18, what did you think was going to be your life path?
Oh, God, when I was 18, I was in love, and then I went to the Navy, and then I went to college, and we got married and had children early, so I've got a daughter that's 48, so you know, some of the guys I deal with now said, you could be my son or my grandson, even worse than that. My oldest grandson's at OSU now, and so the little people are starting to grow up to be big people.
Now, you spent a lot of time, grew up in the New Orleans area, Louisiana very much, very distinctive Louisianan.
Yes.
You spent some time in Texas. What were you doing there?
We moved to Texas on a job. I went to work for Bob Moore in Oklahoma City. He had a large insurance company that I ran for 10 years for him, and then wound up going into business for myself, and that led me to Tulsa to buy the old Crown Auto World on Sheridan, 44th and Sheridan.
Well, this is like a third career for you then.
This is, yeah, the automobile industry has been my career for the past 30 years, but being a dealer, I'd never had an interest in becoming an automobile dealer because I enjoyed meeting them. I traveled internationally with it. But as I got to the point I was approaching 50, I started to tire just a bit. And so I came up here, and I was still a young lad, and I'm going to be 69 in November, so I'm getting old here in Tulsa. And we love it because it's a lot like New Orleans.
Did you ever think that this was going to be your adopted hometown?
Never. Never. As a matter of fact, what I knew about Tulsa is that Jerry Rome played and Largent and Twilly played, and we'd watch them. They'd be always on late, so a lot of times in New Orleans we'd catch a game if it was on television. So we were always amused that Tulsa had such a good football team and basketball team back then. So I was familiar with Tulsa. as I was consulting, I did a lot of business here in the early days, and so I knew some of the dealers and really liked the city because it was, to me, it reminded me of New Orleans. Very genteel city, very giving, and it's a great place to raise kids. Never thought that all of my children would be here. The whole family's here now, and 2 of them work for me, and one of them is in education, and actually her husband works for me part-time.
I always wanted to ask somebody who runs a car dealership, who's been in the auto industry, what was your first car? What was your most favorite car as a kid?
Well,
as a young person?
I learned how to drive on the Turtle, and the Turtle was a 1950 Buick hardtop with the sun visor in front. It looked just like a turtle. But my first car was a 1957 Ford Fairlane, which I had a 4-barrel and Smitty exhausts and Edelbrock cam, and I was one of those guys that the police just loved to hear coming. So that was my first love.
Well, what about the whole Tulsa adoption? You've come here, you say it's a lot like the New Orleans area for you. What are the activities that you're involved in outside of your work?
Well, one of the things that we did when we came here, I was on the road most of my life, so I didn't have time to really be involved in the community because I was gone most of the time. And I always promised myself if I ever settled down and had a business that would be in the community, I would give back to the community. So we started out, before we made any money, just giving back, and not necessarily money in the early days, but our time. And that really kind of hooked us in, because people say, well, you're always on television, and look at you doing this. And I said, I don't do any of that. People just come to me, and maybe I'm lucky. But when we do something, I never ask to be seated in the front. I just sit in the back. And just because we've been generous, I think that's played very well for us. So, you know, we're heavily involved. I'm on the foundation board here.
For Tulsa Community College.
I'm a trustee at OSU. I do a lot of work with other charities in town. I do a lot of work with kids, and especially Northside kids. We've been working with some of the basketball teams over there, Luther Piggies. We have the Pigs Pop-Off every July, which I've sponsored now for 20 years. And Cordell Love has a program which we found that some of these kids don't eat when they don't come to practice. And also we've been giving food and things to them. So, and we urge other people to do the same thing. You don't have to have a lot of money, and you don't have to have a lot of fame. If you just help somebody help themselves, you'd be surprised how lucky you become. If people say how lucky I am, I'm not lucky, I just work hard.
Well, your work is almost a hobby, it seems, because you look like you enjoy yourself.
Yeah, well, it's just like owning the Talons. Everybody ought to own one sports team. And, you know, we have partners, and, you know, we enjoy it, but it's tough business. And people say, oh, look at that, that's really great. That's not, it's hard work. And, but if you enjoy it, and people say, well, if I listen to you on television, I really feel like you're talking to me and you're having fun. Well, I do, and I make fun of myself because, you know, with the I have a face for radio and a voice to match. So to go on television, that's really a stretch.
One of the things, when I think about you, as I think of Dave Thomas and the spokesperson for Wendy's, that same kind of style. When you were initially doing commercials back in New Orleans and now, is there much difference, or is it the same guy?
No, same thing. I mean, if you don't think a whole lot of yourself and you come across that way, it's really good. And Dave Thomas is probably a good example. People confuse me with Tommy Lasorda or Tom Bosley. And I've had people come up on a plane and say, hey, Mr. Lasorda, would you give me an autograph? Sure, absolutely. You know, what are you going to say? I'm not Tommy Lasorda and embarrass him. I just signed it, Tommy Lasorda.
What advice would you give to somebody who is working on air, on television or radio, or just in life in general, in terms of how you present yourself to become successful?
Be yourself. And not only be yourself, but have a plan. You can't go anywhere without a plan. Because if you don't have a plan or a roadmap, you'll never know when you get there. And I've set my sights high, and people would laugh at me. When I was younger, people said, oh, you're not going to do that. You're from New Orleans. People from New Orleans don't do that. You went to Holy Cross, and that's just a boys' Catholic high school, but that was for dumb jocks, and you played ball, and, you know, you're not going to make it. We just had our 50th high school reunion, yeah. and I was kind of proud to be there because I did okay.
Did you notice when you went to your 50th? Because I've gone to
people are old.
There are a lot of old people going to those reunions.
All of these old people, but the guys that we were buddies with
yeah.
are still buddies. And we had some time. We had the reunion, but then we went to one of the guys' home to eat crawfish and crabs. And when you got right down to it, the guys who were friends in high school were still friends, and they were all gathered together, and we had just a wonderful time. And we started to follow each other up. So now 2 or 3 times a week on the internet we're telling stories and having fun, and we're going to try to get together down in New Orleans and do a small film on the class of '59. So that's
now you make, as we talked about, some things that people might not know. You've made some videos that nobody's seen. Well, tell me about that.
Well, we put the statue of the fireman up after 9/11 down in Bristow, and we filmed it. Clayton Costa did it for us, and we got the firemen to help. We used their equipment. It was very authentic, and we taped it every day. And we made a little movie out of it, a little 7-minute movie. As a matter of fact, I think it may be on the internet. If you go to the website, you may be able to see it. And then my son was in Daytona when Earnhardt was killed, and he had to get some film. So we did the same thing. And then when Katrina came, we had an awful lot of real film from the first day, both movies and still. And we did a little thing about Katrina, which we have. And maybe if you guys want to show it one day, I'll be happy to bring it down.
I'd like to see it.
Yeah.
You're a sports fan.
No.
Always?
Oh, yeah.
What is it about sports that touches you, that gets your passion going there?
Well, I was a little fat kid when I was young, so everybody picked me last, and I got to grow and started to play better, and wound up having a very nice career, nothing fancy. But my mom and dad would play with us, and my mom had her own set of spikes. She was in the original girls softball leagues of the 30s, and we have pictures of her, and my dad loved it. So we'd go out to the park, the 4 of us, my brother, my mom and dad and I, and we'd play hardball. So then we started about 9 years old, not like the kids this year. We didn't have anything to play. But I think I was 9 or 10 and started playing organized ball and just loved it. And I played football, I wrestled, I played baseball, can't jump, couldn't play basketball, but I loved to play it just to muscle people around. But those were my sports, and I got a chance to, through Tom Dempsey with the Saints when he kicked the kick, a friend of mine and I were his agents and wound up working for Mark McCormick, and got a good chance at the pro side, and I've managed pro athletes, I've managed fighters in the past, and it's been interesting. It's a different life, and I just love sports.
Now, for some people who don't know Tom Dempsey, he set the NFL record for distance.
63 yards.
Also, his foot was...
he had half of a foot, and at the time, the owner of the Cowboys, Tex Schramm, wanted to disallow it because he had a flat foot. He also didn't have a hand. He had just a nub for a hand, and he could play golf with the best of them. He was a left-hander.
Now, you said a little earlier that everybody should own a sports team.
Once. It's like a boat. The 2 best days of your life is when you buy the boat and when you sell it. And it's tough. It's tough. It's a regimen. Things happen, things go wrong, and you have to be, you have to roll with the punches. And, another piece of advice, don't take yourself too seriously. And if you do, I mean, you're dooming yourself to failure. Because I don't take myself serious. I've had clowns hit me in the face with the pie, and everybody believed that we cut to somebody else, and there was even word of who it was. Dale Cook got the hammer. Well, it had to be Dale Cook because he'd do something like that for Henry. I got one right now that we're going to do in the next 3 or 4 weeks. That'll be a humdinger.
Back to the Talons.
Yeah.
How did you become an owner? How did all that start?
Well, Paul Ross and I are buddies, and he bought cars from us, and we were talking. Actually, we tried to buy the Oilers, and that wasn't for sale for the price we wanted. So they said, why don't you buy the Talons? And we did. They had won the championship the year before. What we didn't know is they took all the players with them when they moved to Oklahoma City. So we bought it, and now we have 2 other partners, Mike Johnson, David Box, and Bill Cameron. And we've just done very well. We were the winningest AF2 team ever. And right now we're not on top, but we're winning, and we have an excellent chance at the championship in AFL, which is a whole new, it's major league, and it's really exciting. And we had a big win this past week against Cleveland, who had beaten us early in the year. So,
well, what can you tell me about the players? What are, I mean, is this a full-time job for them? Are they on their way to the NFL if they make it?
Some of them are on the way up. Some of them are static. Some of them have played in bigger arenas, and now they're coming back. But the arena football right now is the only other real professional league other than the NFL. So we play with NFL taught referees. We're on the NFL station every Friday night. There's a game on, a national game of the week. So if it's a wonderful opportunity. We have a guy, Donovan Morgan, that played twice in the NFL. He's back down here now, and he was a Rookie of the Year at AFL when it went out of business. He was Rookie of the Year that year, and he's doing a wonderful job for us. And we've got other players that really will have some opportunity. Now, some of the guys were not healthy enough to be in the NFL. They weren't quite large enough or quick enough, but they make wonderful players here. And the great part about it is you're right there, and you can hear the shots, and there's no difference between getting hit in the NFL and getting hit here.
Is that the biggest difference between the indoor league, the arena league, and NFL? Is the closest the proximity?
The proximity is one thing. The fact, in the old days, it used to be an Ironman league. They played both ways, and the NFL didn't do that. So the players were different. Their size, they were size difference. But now that we have platoon play, I mean, they have offensive guys that are 650. I don't know how big they are, but they're 12 feet tall, and they're that big, and they're really good. Mm-hmm. And our guys are really good. We've got some big ones too, but a lot of the guys that we have that played AFL ball decided to come back here rather than go to their original teams, which has caused a little angst, especially for Chicago when Donovan came back down here.
Well, there's an ebb and flow in the world of sports over the years. When we were kids, baseball was king.
Yes. Yes.
And we saw an emergence with NFL and college basketball, pro basketball.
Right.
Where do you see your team and that league going in the years to come?
I think the league is going to be a league that's going to be international. There's some talk this year about going to China next year and playing some games. It's been talked about going to Europe. And Jerry Kurz, who is the commissioner now, has had that experience before. So we look at, we'll never be the NFL. The reason they went broke before is they tried to be a competitor to the NFL. What we're going to do is we're going to develop people, the officials that officiate our games. Not only are they from the NFL, but the NFL brings guys down to let them see the speed of the game, to see how quick it is. It sharpens their skills. So we have a great relationship with the NFL. So I think going further, we have 15 teams this year. I think you'll see 20 teams for next year. We've just announced 3. I think you may see 2 more. And our goal is probably to have 30 teams coast to coast, and then we'll be breaking it up into different divisions.
Well, really, you've got an entertainment product.
That's what it is. It's an entertainment product, and it's great football. And it plays when other sports, the regular football is not here. So people have a craving, especially in this state, for football. And we have 2 teams. We have one in Oklahoma City, one here.
Well, we got to pay attention to a business model as well.
Yes.
And both of us probably remember the Oklahoma Outlaws, and they were playing in the early part of the year.
Right.
They had Doug Williams, but they also had ice storms almost every game.
Well, not only that, but the model for the AFL compared to the old AF2, which we were part of, the AFL didn't work. They had too much salary, too much expense, and with this model, it works better. And that's not to say teams aren't having financial difficulty, because it's difficult to change leagues. We're a flying league. We play coast to coast and border to border, so we're traveling a lot more than we did in AF2, so the expenses are higher.
And you travel with that team.
Oh, yeah. I have a good time doing that.
Are you a good fan? Are you? How do you? If we put a video camera on you during a game, what will we see?
You wouldn't like it. You might love it, though. The fans love it, but I do the radio away from town with Rick Corey, and even last week we were out of town, and I said a word I shouldn't have said in Spokane. But I'm a hard loser. I'm sorry, and that's how I run my business too. I'm a hard guy, but love the team, love the players, and we have our own show that's on Channel 12 at 1 o'clock on Saturday, and we'll shoot that tonight, and we have a great time. It's a lot of fun, and you can't. The pride of ownership is like, I always worked with somebody else in the automobile business and did a lot of good. But the first night I came here, there was 5 inches of ice on the ground. It was cold. The wind was blowing. And I stood out in front of the dealership about 9:30 the first night, and I looked at it and I said, boy, this is all mine. And it overwhelmed me. It's just like the day I moved into my first house, and took my first shower in my first home, it was overwhelming. And that's what the dealership is, that's what the talents are. But moving away from home where no one knew you, and I told my people at Crown Auto World, I said, you know, nobody knows who I am today, but we're going to work hard, and over the years, people will get to know us.
Let's go full circle with this, and it really has to do with who you are as a person,
right,
and where we are right now as a country. These are frightening times. What advice would you give to somebody who's got a family or is trying to build a life and sees this economy?
Well, you can't sweat the stuff that you can't do anything about. Let's face it, we may hate what's going on in Washington. Some people love it. I personally believe a man ought to make it on his own. A woman ought to make it on her own. I do not believe in all the giveaways except for those who are infirmed, those who are ill, those people who fate has dealt a bad hand. We should take care of all of our people, and we should obey the law. That's one thing. And it starts with crime, and it goes from there. But if you can't control what's going on, then do the best you can with what you can control. I would suggest that everybody save their money. I would suggest that everybody have a good attitude. Whether you like the president or don't like the president, he's the president, and he's what we have. And we should be behind our government, although sometimes it's kind of tough to do that in these days. But I see the biggest problem in my business today, other than credit, is people are afraid to buy. People are afraid of the future. When I was a kid, and I was 17, 18 years old, I was scared to death of the future. Didn't know where I was going. I was really as self-confident as I appeared. I was really afraid inside. And now as you get older, and I'm not worried about the younger generation. They'll take good care of us, just like my grandfather told me. He said, you know, they're going to turn this over to you guys. We're dead. We don't have a chance. But we made it. We're all going to make it. There's going to be a war, and we're all going to be called up, and we're all going to serve, and we're all going to do a great job. And, you know, a military experience is a wonderful experience. And I went to the Navy, and I was in submarines. And when I was in the Naval Reserve, I actually served on the Batfish. As a matter of fact, I brought something for you that I carry all the time. Well,
and you want to do a video as well
yeah,
about the Batfish.
Yeah, I'd like to do that. This is a challenge coin, and this is a Batfish challenge coin.
Oh, my goodness.
When I was in the Navy, I was on a sea poacher, and I carry their challenge coin everywhere I go. So I'd like to present that to you as a former member of the Batfish crew, and we're doing a lot of work to try to make her whole again, and they just got the mast, part of the mast from the Oklahoma, and hopefully we can get that up and do some good things. But maybe one day we'll invite you all down and take you on a tour for Batfish.
Well, that sounds great. Henry Primeaux, thank you for visiting.
I appreciate it. We got more than a couple of minutes, too. Thank you so much for having me here.
And that's it for Studio 21. Thank you for joining us.